Welcome, everybody, to the Happy Spot. Jack Thomas coming to you from the Happy Spot, and we are blessed today with Mr. Abdul Roberts, Esquire, at law firm J Lo. I had the good fortune of going to an event this weekend that was on magic mushrooms in the state of New Jersey, and Gatiri is an unbelievable man. He put in multiple groups. I met Abdul, and he was so dynamic in how he spoke on the symposium. We're going to get some feedback on healthcare, employment, cannabis, mushrooms, and how do you get your wellness? Now, in biohacking, there's a biological order. In hacking, how do you pay for it? That's the open conversation. At the Happy Spot, we engage others. So our market are everyday people that can learn because they're living extraordinary lives. So Abdul, I'd love to open the floor and give you 2 minutes. Please, first, thank you for our fans and you sharing your wisdom. But can we have a just 2 minute background of who you are today, personally, professionally, so we can get a little flavor of your being?
Well, first, let me thank you as well, Jack, for inviting me to be here tonight. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and all that are listening tonight. My name is Abdul Roberts. I'm a partner at Jallo and Jallo Law Firm. I currently reside in the state of New Jersey, but I am licensed to practice in New Jersey and New York. Prior to actually being at this firm, I did work specifically in healthcare law with doctors and medical professionals. And prior to that, I was in the United States Army JAG Corps. So I'm a United States Army veteran where I served and had an opportunity to deploy through that. In my personal life, I like to play sports. I am married with my wife and our wonderful dog who we walk every evening. And I'm certainly enjoy the opportunity to be here tonight. And I can't thank you again for opportunity there, Jack.
Well, first, I want to thank you for serving.
Thank you very much.
And so I'm going to play a little bit with you because we don't know each other, but we were just having 10 minutes and having fun. But as we're getting to know each other, the energy is right. So when I hear military and people that have served, you know, I'm a little older than you. And so my generation, I go back point to point. Most of my friends, we could go back through history and time and the wars and the things. But it seems like every day we're at war, right? I have my phone in my head every day. And so at biohacking, right, one of the tools that we do is teach each other to leave that alone. But I want to stay on the war thing because I will never forget 1974. I lived in a row house in Queens, and everybody was a little mix of more white, Russian, German, Irish. And I worked in a very mixed neighborhood, so I had the flavor, but I will never forget 1974. A woman, a girl, I was 10, I was 8. She was from Vietnam. Her family, it was the first Asian family that had moved in. We lived in a row house. And I'm like saying, Dad, aren't we in a fight with Vietnam? And he's like, the war ended. And this was a group of people because they got rushed out. They landed in Queens. They wound up in our neighborhood. And so my neighborhood was so mixed. It was the blessing back in the 70s that gave me who I am today and the appreciation of other cultures. And what I did learn is our mind as a warrior in yoga and martial arts. You see how I cross over from that warrior mindset, but we're not a warrior like you. So what type of training in your military background do you think helps you in your professional life as a warrior, as an attorney and representing your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the training that I know the training that I actually received, and just the idea that you have to be resilient, that resilience, whether in what form that comes in is always different, but that level of resilience in a person is a tool that you can really take to make you dynamic in itself. And that's what helps so much in the representation of clients and in your personal and professional, growth and well-being.
So what would be an example of the tool? I interrupt you to kind of bring that down because what did the Army give you as a tool, or what type of training, what type of mentor, right? It's tools, training, and that leadership role that you now live as, but you aspired to. So walk us through a little bit of that, please.
Yeah, so when I first went into training for the Army JAG Corps, our first training was down at Fort Benning, where we were expected to take on warrior tasks as they took them, as well as leadership tasks. So we were tasked, and our goal was to one, not only to become a warrior in the war front, learning how to, basically shoot weapons, become physically fit and things like that, but also know how to be a good leader for people and with that, they give you the mentorship of your superiors. You're put in a role, then you have those mentors who say, hey, I've been here for 15, 20 years. I've seen this. This is how you can approach it, but also give you the freedom to be, unique and allow you to put your own uniqueness to completing those tasks to allow you to become the professional of the future.
So thank you for that. I want to play around with words and the opposite. So I work as a yogi, right, in life. And
Mhm.
so as yogi, the way that we learn is from the contrast of the opposite. So my left side may hurt, but it's really coming from my right shoulder. And so it's learning how to kind of navigate that on a workout. So I hear warrior and leader. So my struggle as a yogi is I was originally taught martial arts in Queens at 14 years old to be a warrior because I got beaten up as a kid because I was a Jewish kid and got beaten up. Imagine that, the Jewish kid got beaten up. Sounds like today. I make fun, I make jokes, I'm completely incorrect. I'm a biohacker. But my family put me into martial arts and I was trained to be a warrior in my mind, not like you as a warrior, but that same mindset. And years later, I got hurt sparring and fighting, and I was introduced to yoga at 27 instead of getting surgery on my neck. And that was the greatest gift I ever received was getting dropped on my head. No, not by my mother, but sparring with a friend of mine and finding yoga. And 30 years ago, yoga was not acceptable. And today, I just sat with Shaquille Kevin Brown, who goes by Warrior, and that's the name of his martial arts studio in Bloomfield, New Jersey. And we are meshing the warrior of a yogi, of that kindness, but the warrior of a warrior.
Mhm.
Thoughts on that opinion? How do we bring that into our society? How are you doing that with your clients? More on your clients. Society will come back to. So how do you be that warrior for them?
Yeah, and I think the way you phrased it is perfect because what you're bringing together is really a thought process for a person to achieve. It's really understanding that you don't have to be physical to be a warrior in the sense. There is a mental aspect and component to it that when you can master that, you can move yourself in a different way than what you would expect if you're just trying to master the physical aspect of it. So that's really where I concentrate a lot of my times with my clients is helping them understand that mental mastering can help and provide so much more dividends than what you would typically expect or not even know.
I love how you choose your words to go from warrior to dividends and tying it into the money aspect, because it always comes down to what's the benefit for the client. There's a financial mechanism that is going on. And so it's so beautiful how you go about that. And my next question rolls into, so how do you define, so talk to me what a leader looks like and how the Army taught you to be a leader. Because to me, a warrior is a leader, right? But you were very distinct in your words, so I'm sure you received distinct training and just curious if we could see this side by side.
Yeah. So with respect to leadership in the army, I think it takes a more common understanding of it. It's less about being the best warrior, more about utilizing your mind for the benefit of everybody and being able to look beyond what is in front of you and piece together some things that will come together and provide for a greater good for, the organization, your unit, and just those around you. And you're really building an ecosystem around you and knowing who and where to go to. So there was that distinct, you know, difference in how they want you to view leadership in the army versus being that warrior that they want you to be as well.
That's so great. Thank you. And So how does your family take to you from a warrior leader perspective, or do they still look at you as that little kid when you were that young little 10-year-old, as we talked about earlier? How do they engage you?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think I get different reception based on who it is. So I have a older brother who is 11 months apart from me. So we're less than a year apart. So it's a little bit harder for him to get out of you're still my little brother, you're still my little brother role. And but whereas like, my mom or my little brother, they kind of see it, they know what I did, they understand where I was at. And so they kind of give me the reception like, okay, he has leadership, he is this type of person. But it's always interesting interacting with my older brother because we have this inside quote, we're 11 days apart from each other, so we call each other twins for 11 days. So I think, that really puts us on par. So we get different receptions, but it's always nice, it keeps you grounded and humble.
That's great. Thank you. And you had shared with me at some point you had lived in New York and New Jersey. And so your immediate family, are they near where you live now, or are they spread around?
So my immediate family is, I would say, spread around. A majority of them are in Western New York, near
Mhm.
Buffalo. But I do have some family who lives in Georgia as well as Florida.
Great. So thank you for giving that side by side on warrior and leader. And what would be an example? You were saying how you lead your clients. What is something from a more tactile conversation that you have with your clients? So your everyday people, like your speaking is so brilliant. Now, if we're going to bring it down, I represent people in the automotive industry, and they'll be like, simple.
Yeah, so the very simple of it is when I talk to my clients, it's as simple as the tech can be, hey, we want you to go file this. We don't want you to make this deal. The deal is no good because you will get robbed in the end. I don't need to go through the explanation of why the percentages won't work, but in the end, no, you will get robbed. So we just don't think it's a good deal. Just make it very straightforward, and that is what is awesome about being able to translate that for my clients.
I loved how your vernacular just shifted. That you see that's the beauty. That's the beauty of working in New York and New Jersey, because your client base is probably as diverse as your warrior and leadership skill set has to play to.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're about to roll into break. We're at the happy spot. This is Jack Thomas. We have J Lo and J Lo. Hopefully, I pronounced the firm's name right. We have a partner, Abdul. I asked him. I said, "How do you want to go?" He goes, "By Abdul." And I always appreciate when someone is like, you don't need to call me Mr. Roberts or attorney. Everyday guy on our show here today. We'll be back in a moment. What we're going to pick up on are 3 levels of law, from employment law, cannabis law, and health law, and get a feedback from our attorney, Mr. Abdul. Jack Thomas, the happy spot. Be right back.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Jack Thomas and the Happy Show. I am just navigating right around here for a moment. Excuse me one second. Let me stop that. And let me come right back into our view. Okay. So we have our guest here from J-Lo and J-Lo, partner Abdul Roberts, attorney. And he's going to talk about topics that are in the marketplace. And the reason why I'm looking at it, employment law in the state of New York and New Jersey changed on June 1, and there's a variety of new laws going in. And so we'd love to get your opinion on the employment law first, then a little bit on healthcare, just a little smattering. So on employment law, I understand that non-competes, if they're signed in New York, are no longer legitimate. I understand that if you're working in an hourly position, you now have to have a 20-minute break, right? No longer 15, right? What are the little things that are going on in New York and New Jersey? And the reason why I ask this, it's because of the psychosocial problem that is going on, and we at the Happy Spot solve it, but it hasn't really delineated all the way down, but it will. But what are you seeing, or what can you share with your feedback on experience on some of these new changes for your clients?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I have clients on both sides who are affected by this, either whether it benefits them or you see it as a negative. I don't think it's necessarily a negative with regard. What you are seeing is
So elaborate. So when you say both sides, so a little bit about your business, so we can have you promoted to other clients that we're speaking to. What are both sides, if you can
Okay,
share?
so yeah, and no problem. So I do management side, labor and employment, which means I would be dealing with the management, whether or not you would be taking disciplinary action against an employee, things of that nature. But I also deal with prosecuting and defending wage claims. So if a particular employee, specifically like in New York, there is specific laws regarding when overtime comes into play, what is minimum wage depending on this job description, things like that. So there's a lot of disputes that come as a result of that. And then also we do more general stuff, just like implementation for businesses, like a policy and procedure, so that employees can know what's going on and that they can be comporting with the laws. So we do all of that. So we kind of see both sides of it. But I do think that there is a social shift that is occurring here. And what you see is the law kind of catching up with that in a sense, where specifically with non-compete clauses, there's been a shift in what you would have expected maybe 30 years ago, where people are very local with their job. They live near where they work. Their family is close to where they live. You didn't really see the transient population, which is less than what you see now. You see a lot more people who are moving. I mean, COVID was a great example of work from home and people deciding to move and still work in a different state. And so the impact of those non-competes are a little bit different than what you had expected maybe 30 years ago. So I do see a very big social shift that where the labor and employment sector is catching up. And there will be some time where it takes for us to get used to it, but I can't say that all the changes are bad. I think some of them are just really just catching up with the times.
So you just enunciated all of it so perfectly. So I just want to sound it out. So as an attorney, you recognize the socioeconomic changes by the laws catching up what has been outdated for 30 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's our job. Like my job as an attorney is to kind of bring that forward as well with my clients. It's like, hey, this may be a little outdated. Let's go get something done about this. And let's force the socioeconomic issues to catch up, and let's have this in paper, because that's the protection the law is supposed to give you, is to protect those socioeconomic things that, the everyday person can't.
Perfect. So that's unemployment. Now that it's secondary part, you get to choose your choice. You want to go cannabis or you want to go healthcare? Which one comes in that cycle of conversation?
So I would say cannabis. I think cannabis comes second to that, because what you're also seeing in that, which is kind of overlapping, is the intersection between the change in labor deployment and how that is implemented in the cannabis industry and how unique that is. And then also the impacts of use of cannabis on employment outside of the industry, and what employers are doing with regard to the legalization of marijuana in New York and New Jersey at the state level, but not at the federal level. And then now with the most recent recommendation to reschedule it. So, you kind of see these, it's still a very socioeconomic issue being.
So thank you. So you brought up a topic that I heard at the event when people were talking, but I'm ignorant of the rescheduling. So number one, Gaetano had an expungement for people that helping them out that had problems in the past, which I think is awesome, right? Giving back to the community. But what does that look like to you from where we were?
So I think, so I'll be honest with you, expungements are a necessary tool in this, when we're gonna move, and when we're gonna acknowledge the socioeconomic impact of marijuana, the benefits of it in the industry, then expungement and the social side is just as important as the economic side of it.
But so explain. So I'll give you an example
Mhm.
how I'm thinking, but I want you to help me confirm.
Mhm.
So I have a dear friend of mine,
Mhm.
I'm 58. When we were kids, he dealt drugs, got in trouble, got busted, and now he works at a very high level corporate environment job, but it's
Mhm.
not a licensed job, not a doctor, very successful in making money. But if he wanted to get a license to be an attorney or in some of the professions I'm in, he couldn't get it.
Mhm.
So is that what the expungement does? And who is it catered to? People that have drugs in the problem in the past, or am I missing something?
So I would say the expungements are more catered towards those that are less for selling and more for like the simple possession. So just a slight change in the scenario you gave me. Let's say the same friend was arrested for the possession of marijuana back in 1980. And they were able to, pay their fine, and they're working at a high level place and everything like that, but they're unable to do certain things because they have that. That expungement was geared to remove that. When it comes to like the
Is
more,
that state driven, the expungement, or is it federal driven?
it's currently it's state driven.
Hmm.
Currently, you only see, now there is talk at the federal level where they will offer some clemency, but that hasn't been seen on a consistent basis yet. Where you see these bigger programs are at state level. So you see the state of New York, the state of New Jersey saying these are policies that we're going to implement here, and we'll expunge our state offenses for that matter.
Yep. So that'll be great. So I just was sitting with I don't want a high level institution, school institution in New York on employment service. So that would be great to know that people get expungements and creating jobs and opportunity and going back to the economic. You started saying something, I had interrupted you before, and my apologies there, on the rating of drugs or the classification. So what's a class 1, class 3, class 4, and how does that affect marijuana on sales and usage?
Yeah. So just generally understanding the difference between the scheduling, there's 5 scheduling currently, and the drugs are classified based on what the DEA has determined to be their medical use. So class 1 is the least amount of medical use. And as you increase in number, there's more medical use for that particular
So,
drug.
so 1 second, sorry. So you sound like the doctors when I go to the doctor, and I don't go to many doctors, and they talk to me, I go, I don't know what you just said. So class 1 is a not good for medical, or
Yes. Not good for medical. So if it's class 1, it's not good for medical. If it's class 3, that means there's more medical use.
So
So
class 1, what would be an example besides marijuana?
yeah, so another class 1 is like opioids, Percocet,
Oh,
highly addictive drugs that there may be some there may be medical use, but they're so addictive, they're so damaging that we do not think a person should have this in their possession on an everyday basis.
but opioids are written as a prescription from doctors, right? So we are taught that opioids, listen, we all know now, highly addictive, all the bad things. I get it, but they're still being prescribed, so they're legal to prescribe. Yes? Am I correct?
Yes, they're legal to prescribe. So the DEA has determined that they're still able to be used in medicine, just they're going to be highly regulated, right? So that's how it happened. So to the original question with the rescheduling, the recommendation has been now to reschedule marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. So what that means in overarching it means that the government realizes that there's a medical use for marijuana, and that's important.
That's huge. And so how come I go to your event and I hear it, but I'm not hearing it on the news? All I'm hearing about is things going on in Ukraine and Hamas and the politics and right. And Biden hates Trump and Trump, who cares, right? Like that's what I'm reading in my New York Post. I read the Post for 50 years. It's my measurement, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? How come we're not hearing about this medical change? Because we all know mental wellness is the biggest problem. And I'm not saying marijuana is an answer, but it's a tool.
Absolutely.
And so what else is classified as class 3 so we can relate to that? What else would be in that?
I'm not sure offhand exactly what else is in class 3. What I can provide for a good example is a class 4 is like ecstasy or Molly, and those are also used in prescription drugs, right? There's certain things that are used in prescription drugs to quell, like marijuana is good for nausea. So that's the medicinal use that you're starting to see used for it. But there's a variety of drugs. It's hard to get a list of all of them because there's the really unique names, but the most common ones, and I did bring it up, I think with you, Jack, is ecstasy is a Schedule 4, so they see that there's more medical use out of ecstasy than there is marijuana currently. But we're not hearing about it because it's not political. It's not the politicization of it has since went. As more and more states tend to legalize it, there isn't the same political oomph behind it. So you're not seeing it come into the news when it's important to know that there is more medicinal use out of marijuana.
So interesting. So you really have to be versed in so many different scenarios. We're going to move to break in a moment. We'll continue the conversation. But when we do, we're going to pick up on the healthcare side. So we touched upon employment. So you see both sides of the table. You touch upon cannabis and seeing all the changes going on and putting together that our socioeconomic world is changing. And would you say it's because of maybe the speed of computers, technology, and then the kickoff was the pandemic, kind of all three?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what we're going to come back to when we pick up is healthcare, and we're going to continue on the training of the mind and what we believe at the Happy Spot. We are at the Happy Spot. This is Jack Thomas. We have Abdul Roberts from JLo and JLo, and we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
I would like to welcome everybody back to the Happy Spot. This is Jack Thomas, and we have Abdul Roberts coming from J-Lo and J-Lo. And the topics we're talking about and we're going to build from here is upon being a warrior, being a leader. He, as an attorney representing his clients, brings that leadership of Army training, and then we break it down into his professional life in employment law and representing both sides, whether explaining to the management side or to the employee and representing. We moved right into cannabis, and now we're going to move into healthcare. So as an attorney on healthcare, it's all over the place. I'm going to share something with you. So this is how we biohack into a large corporation. So most people, if they're working at a Fortune 200, a Fortune 500, they get benefits beyond anyone's imagination. And I am blessed and fortunate that I've been involved in those types of organizations. And so I had approached this company asking, can the Happy Spot have access? And they heard about the work we're doing. So we're able to pull people in. And so it's the RX card. Matt in Ohio created this. We're in 7 states right now. And so what it is a health advocate card. So like me at 58, I don't really go to doctors. I don't believe in them. That's my own personal thing. But my clients and my friends go to doctors, and at 58, they're talking to 3 doctors and they got 5 different things going on. If they had one point of view besides their mother, their sister, their wife, their friends, they're still confused. At the health advocate, when you get the health advocate, they talk you right through it, and everybody gets their therapist from day one. So that is how we're able to try and change society, is instead of being at the large corporation and this sits at the back of your benefit, we make it the front of the benefit, and we coach the owner on the shifting mindset that this is what society is looking for. You see how our alignment is so in sync?
Yes, I see this.
And do you see it says this is not insurance?
Yep, I do see that.
And so we're not talking on insurance, but this is an insurance vehicle that gives people access. And so I'd love to hear your professional on healthcare, and that's kind of an open forum. So we'll kind of flow in this conversation.
Yeah, and I think you know what you just ended on there is awesome. Access, right? Access to healthcare is huge, right? And what you are doing and putting mental health at the forefront rather than at the back burner is incredible, because mental health is one of those things that for years has been at debate on whether or not it would be covered by insurance, things like that. And it's always, and for a lot of people, they just put it, onto the side. So it's just awesome to be able to have someone who's really concentrating on that and helping a patient understand their own health from a different aspect, right? Like you said earlier, you say a lot of big words, you don't always understand it. So you need someone to kind of help translate that for you. You can't quantify that enough.
I shared with you earlier what my family's about and where I came from. So I lived in a very upscale neighborhood. I was raised, but I worked in a very rough industry. And it was in the 70s, 80s, up until 2004. And it was a rough industry. And so you would just learn from people. You just have to say your truth. And so I'll never forget going to a doctor. I was 21. I was in Manhasset, Long Island, very fancy. I was very sick at the time. It was 4 years of multiple surgery. And I remember leaning in on the doctor and going, "You talk to me in English or I'm going to strangle you." Now, today, we all know that you shouldn't behave that way, but I was so desperate at that point. And at 21, I didn't have the discipline and knowing, and I had my mother going, did you have to behave like that? I'm thinking of my mother, I had nothing else, Ma, right?
Mhm.
So it's my own personal struggles of what I have gone through in my life. And it's not the story about me. It's that when I share this with people, everyone goes, why is no one else doing it? And I'm like, I don't know, right? So, and it's not just me, right? I have a chief medical officer, Dr. Dona, right? She's been at this for years. Doctor burnout is at 65%. I was in Atlantic City. She spoke at a wellness for urgent care centers and educated me on how her laughter or humor was, I'm the doctor. 65% of us are burnt out. I am burnt out. How do I heal society?
Mhm.
If she's my safety valve, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
has to be the elder people like myself that we know that there's a struggle. And so we're starting to knock on the doors because people like you have already been knocking on the doors on the economic changes. Please, I went on a rant there.
No. And I think that's perfectly said because it really is, there is a bridge of the gap coming in the healthcare industry, right? And I think COVID helped kind of propel that. And it really brought a spotlight to the individuals who were in the industry saying, hey, we need to kind of have this shift. And it presented the time for that shift. So it's nice to see that there are, it's coming to the forefront more and more every single day.
Great, thank you. So what else in the healthcare world, do you think would be important to either a business owner? I'll give you an example that I had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point in time, I worked for a very large commercial carrier and represented over 90 businesses. And the
Mm-hmm.
average employee count, let's call it, was 70 employees. Some of my clients that I worked, they had 1,200 employees and something in between there. And so working for this large insurance carrier, employment law, we would get questions all the time. And so we gave the guidance on here's best practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if a lawsuit came in as the insurance company, here's best practice. So one best practice for this particular, no drugs. They had a 100% no drug policy. And this is going back probably 15, 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They had 180 employees, and this person tested positive for marijuana. But at the time, the medical marijuana card just came out. And so he comes into the office to HR and goes, but I have a medical marijuana card. You can't fire. Why would you fire me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it came to me at the time as a representative. And so fortunately, I knew some of the attorneys that were working with the cannabis industry, and they gave us an opinion on there is no ruling yet. It's all so brand new. But if you hire him, you're taking the risk of a lawsuit. But we're saying you should have the permission to hire him, but we can't give you the absolute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the perfect way they probably put it in the perfect way for you guys to say that's the way I would give the advice as well. I would have to say that.
So if you would fast forward some of the things you're seeing today, because that was the evolution of the change, but now it seems that it's getting even muddier. Like we were talking earlier, New York, right? 20-minute waiting, right? How does that work that every employee has to get a 20-minute break? And, maybe if we let them just get high for 2 minutes, they don't need a 20-minute break. We put them back to work quicker. That was meant to be a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah, but that's in jest a great way to kind of look at it, right? It's like what's the cost and what's the risk benefit for these kind of spaces, right? Especially when you have people who have medicinal marijuana cards or things like that, or have to use medicinal stuff. And how does that impact their employability? And then also, what does that mean for your healthcare plan, like as an employer? What are you looking to cover? How are you going to do this? And then outside, like you said, when it comes to business and business policy, what are you setting yourself up for, right? If you have a potential employee who walks in and is high, what kind of second and third order consequences can that have for you? So it's an interesting space where it intersects a lot. And from the healthcare side and things like that, you really do need to have clear and consistent policy so that you're not, in a that gray area as often as you could be.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is kind of probe your mind on like one of your favorite cases that you can share that you think, the everyday business owner would want to know about from an employment healthcare perspective that's amusing that you can share.
Yeah, so I actually was defending a couple years ago. I actually had to defend a matter from a healthcare doctor. He owned his own practice. He was going around, kind of just doing his thing. He was a great doctor. All his patients loved him, but he had this really funny, scenario with an employee basically that had walked in and basically was inappropriate, in a sense, and it led to that employee ultimately being terminated. But what made this case very interesting and so funny about it was there was a lot of cultural dynamics that came into it, but also the way that this doctor decided he was going to operate his practice was more of a, um, let's say, questionable line with his employees. So the policies that we had to, that his insurance company, in fact, actually brought to him, and he was like, "Hey, they told me," we were like, we basically had to call back his insurance company, be like, "Hey, you want to do our job for us? Like, you guys have this all down packed." But it's one of those things that we got. The reason I really enjoyed it is we got to really help this business owner put his business back in a good place and not lose what he had invested so much time into. And he was doing something unique. So we really wanted to help him in that sense.
That's great. So when I had worked at the insurance company and I started there over 20 years ago, our biggest problem was sexual harassment and discrimination claims.
Mm.
And so we had the risk management tools. So we would go into a business on average of 70 employees and go, install this tool, we'll discount your insurance here. Install this, we will discount here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That,
Yeah.
that's kind of my mindset. What we're going to pick up is from a risk management of how, right, the industry is operating from an insurance looks at what the government's rules are. And then they solve the problem based upon what the government says to happen. And then the money's held at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk risk management because I know there's a whole big conversation about money, the banks. And the real question is, are the federal government, are they going to be doing anything? What's the talk going on there? But from a risk management perspective of happiness, that's where we're going to come back. We're going to take a break. This is Jack Thomas at the Happy Spot, and we have Abdul Roberts from J Lo and J Lo, and we'll be right back.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Happy Spot. This is Jack Thomas, and I have Abdul Roberts. So before we move into the next segment on risk management, I want to kind of dovetail on, do you hear the sound behind what our theme music is?
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that intentionally because as a warrior, right, in business, I teach people how to control their mind, because that's really the secret to success with so many professionals I know. And we focus on 5 senses. So one sense that I subtly place in there is what is called megahertz, or a binaural beat. So most people hear tuning forks and they don't realize that the tuning fork, I think it's 432, is like the perfect pitch of megahertz, and it's been around for hundreds of years. So what we do at the Happy Spot is we accumulate tools for the senses, sound, binaural beats. So before I hop on my show to settle my energy down, because I had so much going on, it gives me the focus. We'll also use this in our training grounds in what we're working on right now. And so the training grounds are what I will call proving grounds. So if I say today in the United States, the proving grounds are where? Aberdeen, Maryland. What do they do in the proving grounds? They shoot off bombs and missiles and test them. Bless you.
Thank you.
The original proving grounds, did you know, are in New Jersey?
No.
1874, Sandy Hook. I stumbled upon this. New Jersey has such a depth of information we don't know about. So for 50 years, 1874 into the 1920s, it was the original proving grounds. And why I make that relevant is because I look at the guns and then I look 1 mile over to my right. New York City is like sitting there. It's like Oz. It's like, oh my God, right? Now, today, the proving grounds, I believe, are our minds, and it's a 50-year quadrant. And here's why that's important. What's his name? Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
So he's famous for writing the book. It was written in 1937. It went back to 1887 for 50 years on the greatest industrial revolution the world has ever seen. And it was America. And he interviewed the smartest people in the world to find out, how do you think and grow rich? Well, right here at the Happy Spot, you're part of the back 50 years. It's 2024. And people say, hey, write a book. I said, I can't write a book. You know, it's too much. So by doing the podcasts, we are going back 50 years to 1974, because our whole society shifted to now a complete consumer society. Whether you want it to be that way or not, maybe manufacturing comes back. It's starting to move this way. But in the meanwhile, we're a consumer society. We're inundated. So using the senses. So 1 is sound. Number 2 is vision. I'm going to share with you the one thing that we've been using to help people settle in. And this is part of our OSHA movement and employees well. Are you ready? It's an easy one. In 10 seconds, I can settle anybody down. In 10 seconds, I have to do it. So we're going to go, put up your left hand for me, please. Your right hand. Are you a righty or a lefty?
Right.
Right. So you turn your right into like a lobster claw. So Sarah on my team, we call it the lobster claw now. And now if you turn your left hand over and just kind of put it on top, and it's going into the meat of my hand right here. It's a gentle massage. And I just roll it and I drop it in my lap. Now imagine, right? You're looking at me, you're in the same posture. Now you have a connection. So now if you could take your left shoulder and drop it in the back, and take your right shoulder and drop it in the back. Right? So now if you could just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose. And now just breathe normal one more time. So as I'm watching, we'd have to do a little more breath work. I can tell that there's a little blockage going through somewhere in your body because you have too much going on. But the intent is to have the body settle down, and I could see your shoulders did not. So that's the type of work that we teach managers that were on Zoom calls with their employees to settle down. And sometimes they just need to have some basic training in how to have that energy as it's moving through our body on how to breathe. So we have Shaquille Kevin Brown, a warrior, and we're going to be doing this online for thousands of people because the movement is always the same.
Mhm. Yes. No, this is awesome. No. I could feel what you're trying to do, and I know exactly what you're saying.
And so because my kids are living their life, so that's why I got to know Shaquille Kevin Brown and other yogis that are also warriors. So it's a risk management tool that we're going to be presenting to OSHA. So that's the part where we could talk about in the future to see where our services are in alignment. But I know what the OSHA rules are. We know that ISO has already classified this, and we know large corporations are doing it to some format. All we want to do it is quicker and faster. And in 10 seconds, if I could have 100 of your employees on a Zoom call and have one of my teachers show you how to do it, God, can we make society maybe a little easier instead of people being so angst?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So from a risk management perspective, we have a company to provide health advocate. We have the physical ability. We have more in our tool quadrant that we're putting out there for free. Dr. Dona wrote our remedy. If you're having anxiety, instead of going to the doctor and getting a pill, what they normally, we can give an alternative. And the alternative, again, you follow the doctor's prescription. We do it on time, 21 days. You do it with a partner. Maybe you're going to take magnesium. Maybe you're going to take supplements. Maybe you go to a therapist. Maybe you go to, but there's a protocol and a process. And she is a chief happiness officer. And so she is our chief medical officer at the Happy Spot. And so these are the types of services that we're targeting. Risk management, or is it healthcare, Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, I think that's both. Yeah, I think it's both. Because, if you're really thinking about it, from an employer or organizational aspect, that what you're teaching them is health and well-being for their employees on a day-to-day basis. One that doesn't require them to utilize their insurance, right? So that's its own health law in itself, and how you approach the well-being of your employees and things like that. So I would think it's both. You're getting a little bit of both on that. It's risk management because you are keeping away the angst. You are getting a better product out of your employees. You're managing the risk you take for overworking your employees, but you're providing them with tools for their health.
We also provide part of our services at the Happy Spot is a lot of companies have already started buying tools. For instance, there's a company out there called Unmind. And so one of the law firms that I work with that are in all 50 states use a company of bringing Unmind. And the challenge that I said to my partners in Europe when they were asking me to do certain things, I said, it's in the HR department, and HR people are already overworked. And every time there's a new document, give it to HR, right? And so the last thing I want to do is walk into an HR office and get a dirty look like here's a new document, and I'm not going to succeed.
Yeah.
So I honor and respect my HR compatriots, right? That when we do show up, we've already had this stuff set up. We're just saying hello because we are targeting the CEOs and CFOs on the financial benefits that we're going to show them how the tax savings and risk management of the liability on large corporations will pay for the benefits.
No, I think that's an awesome way to approach it. That, that's the unspoken benefit that they are gaining from this is, you're getting you really are gaining financially from assisting with the well-being and, like you said, the risk management, less angst, less, comments, that could get you in trouble, all of those type of things. So it's wonderful to hear.
So we're about to come to an end, but I really want to compliment you. How you kind of just jumped in. We didn't have anything prepared, right? We just met. The energy just felt right. I met the gentleman that works for you. What's his name? Give him a shout out.
Gabriel Toth. Yes.
Yeah. And what's Gabriel's role in your life?
So he is a associate attorney at our firm, and he also is a class 1 and class 2 cannabis license owner in the state of New Jersey. So we use him a lot for our cannabis industry space.
Well, I'm glad we can give him a shout out because I felt both of your energy. But just as important is in my world, your law firm targets New York and New Jersey. the volume of different choices just played into all my interests. And so your firm is really doing a great job in being a partner out there. So who are some of the other leaders at your firm that you look up to that you'd want other people to know about in the world? Because, there are people that are mentoring you.
Yeah, so I have our senior litigation counsel, Mr. Gregory Pasquale. He's been an attorney for over 30 years. He is what I call my encyclopedia for litigation. He can remember case law right off the top of his head. And then also I have the two owners of our firm, Miss Tina Jallo, who's a surrogate in the state of New Jersey. She's out there helping the everyday person with their estate matters.
What's a surrogate?
A surrogate is a person who is tasked with helping people determine their family's estates. So if there is something that needs, like someone dies with a will, they just need to go through the will process. She assists them with that. She's that neutral third party.
That's awesome. Well, we're just about to come to our end, and I'm so glad we were able to get some of your mentors and get their names out there. You and I will continue the conversation. I'll give you a buzz in a little bit if you're. I'm just going to say thank you. Really, your insight and your help. I look forward to our future engagements of conversations. Jack Thomas at the Happy Spot. Pay attention to J-Lo and J-Lo. Abdul Roberts. This is our future, everybody. This is wisdom at the table, looking for our wellness. Thank you for joining. Have a great day, everyone.